All right, for this block, I've got all my pieces cut and ready to go. The first thing that you need to do is to draw a line on the wrong side of the larger squares from point to point, so it will be on the diagonal. After you have your lines drawn, you're going to place the square right sides together on top of the other square. And we are going to sew on both sides of this drawn line. So in the end, we will have 2 half square triangles from this piece. So now that I have these sewn on both sides of the drawn line, what I'm going to go ahead and do is cut right on that drawn line. That's our cutting line. It just goes from corner to corner. And now we can open these up and press them to the darker fabric. So I'm just going to open them and give them a good press. You don't want to pull on them or get them all misshapen. We will be checking on these sizes to make sure that they are squared up before moving to the next step. So at this point, we have our half square triangles complete. What you need to do is now just check to make sure that your half square triangle is square. I use the block lock ruler for this process. It's my favorite. Just makes squaring up these blocks really super simple. Check the size in the pattern for what you need to square it up to. And you can just quickly flip it around and trim it super easy. Repeat that process for each of these half square triangles. Now that we have all of our pieces and our half square triangles are all squared up, we can go ahead and lay the block out. I'm using the Steady Betty. It's got a little spongy surface on it so it doesn't let the pieces shift around, which is really helpful when you're laying blocks out. And you can press on it as well. It can take your heat. So I'm just moving my pieces that I've already cut out into the pattern of the block. Then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. What I'm going to do is sew 2 of these together, and then I will be adding a 3rd piece onto each of those smaller sections. Now that I have this first 3 sewn together, I can leave them. I did not snip my thread in between. It's kind of just like chain piecing. They're just all connected. I just need to make sure they stay in the correct order. So what I can do is go ahead and open this up, and then I'm going to lay this one on top and stitch this down. When I get to the end, I will repeat the process for these other 2 pieces. So now all of my pieces are sewn together. And what I'm going to do now, I have not pressed this because I can determine where the seam lays when I sew these 2 together. So I'm just going to fold the top 2 rows over, and I'm going to move this seam around until it lays flat. If I want to, I can go ahead and add a pin to keep that seam nestled. And I'm going to repeat the process for the other seam. What I am going to do is make sure that these 2 seams on the top are going the same direction, as well as the seams on the bottom. This will help piecing the next row on as well. So now that those are pinned, I'm going to stitch that seam together. All right, I'm going to open this up, and now that I have that seam sewn, I can go ahead and finish my second seam. I'm going to put on top the one that is already sewn down because this will help me determine which direction this seam needs to get pushed. So I'm going to just go ahead and nest those seams together and then pin it. And I'm going to repeat the process for this other side. So you can just kind of wiggle it around with your thumb and finger until those hit just right, and then pin it to stay. Now I'm going to take this to the machine and sew across that. Now that I have my block complete, I can go ahead and give it a good press. And then after this, I just need to check the size to make sure that it is the size mentioned in the pattern. I can flip it over to the back like this and look how those seams are going. It's a little bit easier sometimes when you can see them. All right, so there is the quilt block.